Now, we've covered a lot of police-involved shootings over the past couple of years. In a few of those cases, they have come to a head in the past day or two. Now, we're going to start first in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That is where the Justice Department has just announced it will not press federal charges against the officers you see in this screen. They were involved in the death of Alton Sterling. He was killed last year while pinned to the ground, as you see, outside of the convenience store. Officers say he was reaching for a gun. They say they found a gun on his person. Now, that shooting has sparked massive protests in Baton Rouge after the videos were released. Sterling's family extremely upset with the Justice Department's decision. Here's what his aunt Sandra had to say.
It's crazy. It's like we waited all this time for nothing. And as we was going through the process, I kept asking them, well, what happens if they don't come back with a decision? This is early on. And he said, well, it'll be worth the wait. No, it's not worth the wait. It's not worth the wait. All this was for nothing.
Now, over in Texas, the officer who shot and killed 15-year-old Jordan Edwards has been fired. Originally, the department said the officer opened fire because the car was backing aggressively down the street towards the officer. But a day later, the police chief said video showed that the car was moving forward and was not a threat to the officer. And then to South Carolina, Michael Slager, the police officer who shot a man named Walter Scott as he ran away with his back to him, just pleaded guilty to federal civil rights charges. Now, this video, shot by a bystander, refuted Slager's original story, and soon after it was released, he was fired and then subsequently charged. All right, a lot to unpack here. I want to bring in our legal panel. Jim Kasuris, a criminal defense attorney in Manhattan, sits on the board of directors at the New York City Criminal Bar Association, frequently lecturing both at New York Law School and the bar associations in Queens and New York City. He, a former prosecutor in the city as well. Mayo Bartlett, an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLC, former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office himself, and a prominent civil rights attorney. All right, guys. First, a broader question, and then we'll get to some of the specifics of these cases. It seems that where in the past, not too many years ago, regardless of the circumstances surrounding a shooting, the blue wall would be erected and the police officer, the shooter, was no matter what in the right, and it would take compelling evidence to be produced to state otherwise. Now, I'm not talking about what led to the shootings in these particular cases, but I'm talking the reaction after the fact from law enforcement. There does not seem to be, in many cases at least, as much of a knee-jerk reaction to always blame the victim and protect the officer. Is it my impression, or do you guys see that too?
Well, I think that there still is a culture of protecting law enforcement officers, but I think there's a realization now that with the advent of cell phones and the different technologies that allow you to record it, body cameras, and the fact that people are now questioning, based upon things that have been seen, that the police are a bit less willing to automatically say nothing occurred. But there is, and that's maybe from the departments themselves, but when you look at police unions, quite often they're more readily interested in saying that, there's nothing wrong there.
And they believe it's the job of the PBA to protect rank and file. Jimmy, your sense also, have things changed in the last few years?
They've changed because they've had to. And they've had to change because when you have a video of a man running away from an officer and getting shot in the back, there's just no way to deny the culpability. And so what people
But I remember, and you guys are closer to this than I am, obviously you worked with law enforcement as former prosecutors, you've been involved in defense cases, even cases, Mayo, I know, where you've been involved where there's been questionable shootings. Even when video was produced or eyewitnesses were there, they say, oh, you didn't see the whole story, you didn't get the whole context. I remembered hearing that. And I just remember even the Slager case is, my God, as compelling as it was, we even just showed a freeze frame where he threw something that he later claimed was a weapon on the person. I said to myself, I think with you guys at the table, I remember not that many years ago where I still would have seen them defending the cop in this case, as inexcusable as behavior was.
Well, first of all, we had a shift in the administration and the Obama administration's willingness to look at these things. But I also think that when you have these videos that show in very clear pictures what happened, even the public starts realizing, you know something? You're just not allowed to do that. That could be my kid. That could be my neighbor's kid. And I think that has created at least a willingness to understand that these things do happen.
And I do know, Mayor, I want to get to a separate point. Maybe not for you. I know certainly for you guys at the table to say, I don't know why you're so shocked by this, but a lot of people were in my bucket, which was some of these videos were mind-numbing that, oh my God, that really happened. And I wouldn't have believed it, frankly, without the video. But Jimmy made a point that I want to pivot to, which is you had a different administration.
See, I did.
The Sessions, you did, you helped me. It segued. It took you guys more than a year to do this, but you're finally picking up on this. But the Sessions DOJ decided there was not enough evidence in that video that we showed from Baton Rouge to prosecute. Now, I know there's different standards. There has to be civil rights violations that took place. From what you've seen and what you've read and followed, do you believe there would have been any different decision from an Eric Holder Department of Justice?
Well, I have to say that under Eric Holder and under the President Obama's administration, I was not satisfied with the way that these cases were handled. And that my impression was that if you had violence in your city, then the Department of Justice would come in. If you didn't, then good luck. They weren't coming in. And that was all purely reactive. Now the difference is that instead of at least giving you the impression that the Department of Justice might come in and giving, importantly, the police department the impression that they could be scrutinized, now you have an attorney general who's telling you that under no circumstances basically would they. And it's interesting because a lot of times you hear from the Republican side that you shouldn't have activist judges and the laws that exist are good enough. Now you have an attorney general saying that we're not going to implement the laws that exist.
And for folks who don't know what Mayor's referencing, Jeff Sessions made a public point here that the policy of the Department of Justice to be the sole overseer of certain communities like Ferguson, Missouri is one here, where they see a pattern of abuse or mistreatment, that somebody would need to come in and supersede and take a look at particular law enforcement departments, that they'd be at least review, and then possibly more. He said he doesn't believe that's where the DOJ should be really spending their resources, let alone emphasis of time. Okay, that all said, do you believe, because it was interesting, I saw the family there in Louisiana, and while certainly they were upset about it, I saw a lot of them saying, we believe this is a positive step. We believe just the very fact that the officer was terminated is a step in the right direction. We don't rely on what the DOJ will do. This is the beginning of the process, not the end. How important is it if someone falls on the side here after seeing that there was a crime that was committed, that he be fired from his job?
I think it's very important, and I think it is gratifying to see that immediately after something happens, at least the first step is to get that person off the job and to make sure that that person does not present a danger while the investigation is continuing. But I do think that it's very important that the Department of Justice does look at these cases carefully and does scrutinize them and does play an active role. And it is very disconcerting to me to know that this administration is basically saying we're hands off.
I will say, though, Mayo, though, as I understand it, and this is your specialty when it comes to civil rights, the threshold to prove, not that it was a good shoot or a bad shoot, but when those officers pulled the trigger, that they were intentionally violating the civil rights of this particular person, which they claimed, and they did find a weapon on this person at the time. That said, it's a different standard as to whether or not they committed a criminal act. For the Department of Justice to be able to come in and in effect say, wait, a crime's been committed here, they have to prove civil rights infringement, correct?
That's correct, but sometimes the Department of Justice comes in and looks at a particular case. They may find that that particular case doesn't rise to the level of a civil rights violation, but then if they scrutinize the department itself, they find either there is no policy, in which case the city could be held liable or the community could be held liable under a Monell claim, saying that it's a policy itself is deficient, or they find that there are, for instance, stop and frisk or frequent violations of existing policy, and then they come in and they monitor and have oversight of that department.
And again, there has been some ancillary information that's come out, whether it's proven or not, that the officer, apparently pulled a gun, put it to the guy's head, and said something I can't say on TV before this even escalated. Whether that's borne out or not, I have a feeling we haven't heard the end, at least through the criminal process of the case in Louisiana. All right, when we come back, this woman has filed lawsuits against 99 different businesses in her hometown. Now she could face thousands of dollars in fines if the judge rules they are in fact frivolous. We're going to ask our panel whether they've dealt with anything like this in the past.